Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires patch 6.1, which Creative Assembly has just announced, and they've given us details on what they're planning to do with it. With 6.1, they're planning to change how Shadows Change is sold by splitting off the free Legendary Lords into standalone packs that can either be purchased individually or as a bundle, because that's clearly worked for Fronts Decay, that's worked for Omens of Destruction. That's the path that they've chosen going forward. One of the consistent messages that they heard loud and clear from the community was that not enough attention had been given to existing content in lieu of new content, so they're taking a crack at equalizing that a bit now, especially for Kislev and Tzeentch. And as a heads up, each of the pieces of content in this article are at various stages of development, which limits what we can say confidently or what images we have to show for specific features. So there is work in progress images over here, and specifics are liable to change as we continue to chisel out what works, what doesn't work, and what our code department will let us maverick designers get away with. So headliner for the content drop is Kislev, who we identified as the most in need of a deep review and rethink. Yeah, it is genuinely one of the worst factions to play right now. And it's one of the worst factions slash races to play right now because of various issues. Kislev has a good army, they have good magic, but the supporter system is pure misery to deal with, one way or another, nor is the Stankia system that much better, really. And then you also have severe limitations on economy and scalability of economy, which does create problems in a longer campaign. They don't talk over here about, or they don't show or talk about, like, what kind of specific economic changes they're going to make. But I imagine there will be some, like, tier requirement changes for various units, heroes, like ice switches, capacity for ice switches, you know, those kind of things. They don't necessarily go into the detail over here, and yeah, work in progress. The supporter race is no more. Long live the new supporter race, because they've basically decided to overhaul this entire system. It's going to be interesting to see how invocations are going to work, because apparently those are still going to be around. In the new system, you're going to accrue support for either side of the conflict via a variety of actions, including fielding relevant units, using thematically aligned agents, constructing buildings, and dedicating your atomins. And what we can see over here, by the way, from this picture, is we get various effects for battle, character, settlement, global, and magic. So I guess we're going to see with regards to that. Curry favor with the orthodoxy to improve your common line troops. So I imagine Kossars, armor Kossars, Streltsy, that kind of stuff. Strengthen your economy and improve your invocations. And support the Ice Court in order to improve your elite infantry, spellcasting, and hero usage. So I imagine things like Tsarguard, for instance, or the Griffin Legion. I'm interested to see how it's going to work out with heroes, because it may not just affect ice switches, though I imagine the ones that will benefit the most from this will be ice switches. A key change is that it's no longer a race. Instead, supporting only one side of the conflict can cause rising unrest and invite disorder into Kislev. In the face of growing threat of chaos, Kislev must seek unity. Therefore, you're encouraged to balance the support you curry with each of the factions. You may favor one, but favoring them too strongly incurs the wrath of the other. So are you saying that this is basically what the Harmony system probably should have been for Cafe? Because that's the impression I'm personally getting with all of this. Like, I'm getting a strong vibe of Harmony, though hopefully in a good way with regards to that. We'll see. They don't have anything with regards to Cafe, but if you're thinking about Harmony for Cafe, yeah, you'd think about some of the things that they're talking about, balancing various pros and cons over there, but still seeking that harmony between those two. With Devotion is they've removed it as a faction-wide resource to a provincial one, replacing control for Kislev. So Kislev no longer has control, they have Devotion. It represents the fervor of the local populace. It acts much like control, but can be spent on local invocations to temporarily boost the local province. So I'm guessing invocations are not going to be global anymore. We'll see about that. A high level of devotion allows Kislev to counteract the penalties of climate. Holy crap, you're telling me that there's an actual effect that you're going to give us to deal with the climate problem that a lot of factions have, allowing them to significant settling flexibility in exchange for a slow ramp up to suitability, and making the territory unsuitable for using evocations. Now, here's my concern with this. When you're talking about the idea of a slow ramp up to suitability, it can't be something like that takes, let's say, more than a dozen turns. Because even a dozen turns, right? Campaigns are not fought over more than 100 turns. So if something's taking me 12 turns, it's not really going to be worth dealing with, except very early on, like maybe a province early on, a couple of provinces. To be certain, Kislev does have a good amount of climate that is viable to them, as it is. The bigger problem is with Kostalton and Katrin in regards to Wasteland, because you have the Darklands right next to you, so Boris, Ursus, and Estancia have significant benefits in their campaign just purely because they have Wasteland climate available. So they do have the new invocations, the local invocations. Will we have global invocations? Don't know. We do have this system of invocations. And basically, this is like labor effects for the cast orbs, or the effects that Morathi or Slaanesh, or the dictats that you get for Dark Elves, which are a good system for a record, but very good system. So they're taking a system that already works pretty well, and they're implementing it to Kislev, but it's going to be based on your level of devotion. It's not going to be like a global resource you're spending in a province. It's going to be a local resource. At least that's my read on it, that you can spend for various effects. So work in progress with regards to that. Then they're changing how atamans work. While the core idea is strong, we felt we could go further. I'm not sure if it's as strong as they thought it would be. Like, you get one ataman every 2 provinces, and they didn't necessarily end up working that well. And certainly you didn't want to use them as generals, just for the record on it. I think that intent is decent. That's how I would phrase it. The intent is good, but not necessarily the execution of it. So atamans can no longer be permanently recruited onto the campaign map as the standard lord. This makes sense, because why would you want them as a standard lord? The benefits that they provide are local benefits, and if it's a question of having them, provide those benefits locally, you can just move them around. I mean, sure, you could get more atamans that way, potentially. But they can no longer lead an army. Now, they enable a new feature for settlements, Garrison Sally Attack, as they call it for now, where you can command the settlement managed by them to engage enemies within a limited distance, as if the settlements themselves were armies. Of course, the capital of a province is led by the ataman himself, who takes the field with the garrison during this attack. Well, this is certainly very interesting. Atamans now have a unique battle loadout, dropping the offensive dual weapon loadout of the standard boyar for a more staunch shield, axe, and pistol. Because, yeah, they were basically boyars, garrison boyars, more or less. And they now have a skill tree and gain experience while administrating settlements, allowing them to improve their governing, strengthen their garrisons, and dedicate themselves to the sects to improve your support. This reminds me of Black Ark admirals, Black Ark lords, or Ogre Camp tyrants. So you do have something similar to that, which, yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly good. Like, more so like the ogres than anything else, because the ogre camps, with their lords, they do gain experience while sitting in those camps, obviously not going around and fighting. Then there's changes to the tech tree, so you now have the land, the people, the state. You have the ice court, ice sculpting over there, as we can see, various changes. But obviously they're not going into exact details onto how everything is changed. But you do have glacial prism, ice sculpting over there, or ice rot and enhancements. Our goal here is to significantly open up your choices, making Kislev have a quite open and navigable tech tree with many possible starts and short paths to end line of techs, with a variety of new and improved technology, like armor for Tsar Guard and charge defense versus large units for Tsar Guard units. And technology is no longer locked behind owning the capital, Kislev capitals, as we felt this heavily incentivized early in fighting in Kislev. The reason why that did so is because getting Prague very early on in the Kislev campaign was an enormous benefit, partly because you could build it up better if you controlled it, partly because it wouldn't get wiped out by by certain factions. And also because, yeah, Prague is a phenomenal city to have, for instance. So that's good. I'm really curious to see if there's going to be any terrain changes with regards to Kislev, like region changes. I think Old World Mod did something very well where they put the Kislev cities. They didn't have them in standalone provinces. They had them in proper provinces with like 4 settlements in those provinces. And that made those cities significantly better for the record. Sure, you wouldn't have access to commandments as easy or as much Ataman capacity. Curious to see how Ataman capacity is going to play out. Probably the same, I'd imagine. But it did make those cities significantly more useful to own, as opposed to just like, you know, the kind of global recruitment benefits. Like, they would be far more useful from an economic standpoint. Then there's Tzeentch. And what they're saying is, while Kislev is our main offering this patch, we've also got something for Tzeentch to chew on. And they're focusing specifically on Kairos. The core promise of Fragments of Sorcery feature was versatility and to build your own composite lore. And the design quickly narrowed in on a true any combination you want feature that completely did away with the idea of an ancillary slot. While we're at it, and they want to draw the curtain a bit and showcase how a feature is visually concepted. Following the concepting and preliminary or technical documentation, we start with what's called a mock-up. Usually the first ones are made by the feature designer. So we get, with Kairos, we get different spell lores. Yeah, obviously work in progress, but different spell lores that are going to be available. So, and then they refine. So that was the first iteration, and then we get this one where we get skills. So work in progress, various skills available, and now they're calling it vows. So yeah, but obviously it's not vows right there. It's just the kind of options that are going to be available, and then you have the Eye of Tzeentch over there with regards to various spells that can be made available right there for Kairos Fateweaver. So they're going to change the spell effects. I'm really curious to see if they change the economy with that. So they're not talking about the economy, but one of the core issues for both Tzeentch and Kislev especially is the economic buildup. And then the Changeling. It's like complicated topic. We've been keeping on a lot of discussions surrounding him. And here's where they stand today. He has resonated strongly with people in both negative and positive ways. We've seen a lot of intense discussion. Look, they're basically saying they're not going to change him right now. But let me be very blunt on this. The Changeling is the most unpopular, one of the most unpopular campaigns in the game. Now, I suspect that their thought process with regards to how much effort they want to put into the Changeling is going to be determined by how people react to him standalone. Because one of the issues, of course, with Shadows of Change is the price point. So they're probably looking to see how people react to the Changeling on his own, when it's going to be more appealing to just buy him on his own. Shadows of Change did not sell very well for Creative Assembly. And even to this day, like, a lot of people have not purchased Shadows of Change. A lot of people don't own it. So I'm guessing they want to see how people react to that before they make any kind of changes for him. That would be my perspective. And then there's going to be some free units. Nice art over there. So they're using concept art, really funny concept art, or, you know, work in progress art, right? So they're adding 2 new units for Cafe, where they're adding Nangao Grenadiers They're relatively cheap grenade-slinging infantry, vulnerable due to their lower entity count, but armed with a significant stockpile of grenades to disrupt and destroy massed infantry. They also carry a specialist stun grenade, which at a baseline allows them to significantly impair the combat ability of all enemy units in a large radius once per battle. So I'm guessing miners with blasting charges for Cafe. Makes sense, right? And then, you get grenadiers for them, and then you have the Noblar flingers. So slingers for goblin. What am I talking about for greenskins? Slingers for ogres. Now this is actually far more significant than one might think about that, because the problem with Gnoblars is, well, the ranged version is not really great. The pigback riders are pretty decent, or ridiculously so. They're cheap, weak range unit that engage at the significantly lower range than the hand-thrown weapon of the Trapper. Right? More akin to a Skaven Slinger, if I had to bear a smidge a little braver. And these malicious Gnoblars exist to harass enemy units. So yeah, Skaven Slave Slingers. They do have a purpose. Keep in mind that, like, you know, just having cheap trash armies is important. Though, considering the way ogres play, I personally don't bother really recruiting any kind of Gnoblar unit. At least not infantry unit. Like, I know you can make it work with pigback riders, but, like, just regular infantry just does better. But there might be a reason to recruit these guys, at least for multiplayer, I imagine, not necessarily for the sake of single player. That would be my perspective. And that's all they have to say right now. It's going to come out in mid-March, so a bit later on than we might have wanted, to be certain, but it is good. What I'm seeing is good. I would have been more interested in seeing how the economy works and building tiers and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of worth pointing out that balancing is one of the things that gets done later on. So one of the last things. And clearly they still have a bunch of work in progress right now. A bunch of decisions that they're going to be making with regards to that. Anyway, I'm happy about this. I certainly won't be happy if they don't change the economy of Kislev, to be clear on that. But what I'm seeing so far is good. I am curious about what we're not seeing, however, so I think that is a critical point. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.